Hey, calling is a pretty big deal. And in this session, we're going to look at primary calling or our call to someone. There's also called to something. Let's just dive right in. So our primary calling, this calling to someone, is we're being called into a relationship with our Creator. And Tim Kite notes that in that relationship, we are called to a worthy walk, we're called to holiness, and we're called to godly excellence. I encourage you to look at those different passages in Scripture and get acquainted with them. Use these as a standard or a benchmark before you act or speak to ask yourself, is what I'm about to do or say, is it worthy? Is it holy? Is it excellent? Does it glorify God? In the 7 divine callings mentioned by Cromwell Handy and Elliott Cuff, they noted, as I said, 7 different parts or divine callings that we can kind of think of as we're called to Christ. We're called to be in relationship with our Creator. A call to salvation. This is actually what gets things going. A call to sanctification, this process of becoming like Jesus, maturing in our character and our relationships. A call to service. A call to separation or holiness, as mentioned by Tim Kite. A call to sonship, so this idea of being called into God's family. A call to subjection, both to Him, so submitting our will to Him, but also Scripture talks about submitting to one another. And then finally, perhaps the hardest of all, is a call to suffering. We identify with Christ through the things that we suffer, we're told. So please dig into these different scriptures, see what they have to say about these different parts of being called into relationship with God, and reflect on them. And here's a fun little exercise that I would encourage you to do just to understand a little more about being called to someone, being called into relationship with God. Now, this passage in Isaiah was written for the Israelites. However, we see a consistent theme throughout Scripture of God calling us into relationship with Him. So what I encourage you to do is read this full passage, Isaiah 43, 1-7, and then put your name where it says you or my. So Isaiah 43, 1-7 says, "Do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." This is God speaking to the Israelites and God speaking to you. "Bring all who claim me as their God, for I have made them for my glory. It was I who created them." So in this little exercise, I encourage you to, in your journal, write out the whole passage. It'll take a little bit of time, but 7 verses. And then where it says, "Do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you," you can put in, "Do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you," and then write your name. John, "For I have ransomed you, comma, John, period. I have called you John by name. John, you are mine. Bring all who claim me as their God, for I have made them for my glory. It was I who created them. It was I who created you, John." So journal this and then just meditate on that for a little while and soak in what God can say to your heart about that. I would say that understanding your primary calling is a essential key to understanding the truth about your personal identity. Every person is unique. We all think about maybe what's our identity, who am I? To better understand who we are, we have to understand who's called us, who created us. So this is key, and in other sessions, other series, we'll look deeper into the issues of identity. Rick Warren said, "It's not about you. God designed you. He created you and redeemed you for His purposes. You were made by God and for God. Until you understand that, life will never make sense." I'll leave you with that quote, as well as just a little bit of work to do here. As you reflect and journal about these different callings I just mentioned, or these different elements of calling I just mentioned, which of these elements of call is God emphasizing in your life right now? Why? And what will you do to focus on that just one thing? And how can our journey group help you in this particular part of your calling, or living out this piece of your calling? Have fun.